this, and I want to know if I'm the only one who's had this happen. You're getting ready to start your next status meeting with your team. You're in the back of the room, pouring your coffee, meeting's about to start in 2 or 3 minutes. Luke, one of your team members, comes running up to you right before the meeting starts. And he says, oh my gosh, Dana, I'm so glad I got you. I have been so swamped. I know you heard about that website fiasco. It is absolutely ridiculous. Can you believe I was out of pocket for 3 days working on that? Unbelievable. I know I was supposed to send that vendor report out to the team for the meeting today. Just didn't get a chance to do it. Really, really sorry about that, but I definitely wanted to let you know. Have you seen some version or permutation of that before? Yes? Okay, maybe a different name, maybe a different excuse. This is my question for you guys, and you're going to talk about this in your little groups. My question to you is, what do you say to Luke in that moment? Not what do you want to say, what do you hope you would say, but what do you think you really would say to him in that moment? And let me provide a few options. Number one, oh, Luke, don't worry about it. We're all running from one fiasco to another. I certainly understand. Please just get it to me as soon as you can. Okay, that's door number one. Door number two, I really appreciate, oh, come on in. I really appreciate your letting me know, when do you think you can get it done, given your workload? Number three, I can't believe this. Why didn't you let me know sooner? Number four, this is not acceptable. You need to get it to me by the end of the day today. Or number five, something else. So I got lots of options there. I want you to take about 5 minutes, introduce yourself to someone you haven't introduced yourself to before, talk to a neighbor, and I really want you to have some dialogue around what do you think you would say to your team member in that moment. I have to admit, right at the outset, there is, from my perspective, it's contextual. So there is no firm right or wrong answer, and I personally have probably said all of these things at one point or another. But let's hear from you guys in terms of what do you think you really would say. Let's see what kind of group we have today. Very interesting. All right, what would you guys say?
Yvonne, you want to go for us?
All right. You've been volunteering.
We'd like to have a volunteer.
I had so much faith in you.
I
We
knew
knew you'd be accountable.
I knew she was
I
ready.
can see. No, we had a little discussion about this, but we thought it was number 5.
Oh.
It's number 5.
Okay.
And along with my coworkers here, they said that we all agreed that we would approach this person, since this report is so important for this particular meeting, that we would ask them to go ahead and get the report, make copies, so that we could at least have this meeting today. And then we'd have a discussion about that by telling him, we want to find out what would you do next time for this not to happen again. So we would go address that afterwards, because we don't have time for coaching at that very moment.
Wonderful, wonderful points. First of all, there's a practical component. If this is something that is critically germane to the session, we may need to call a timeout, figure out how we can do this, get that information, or we may not even be able to have the session. And then the second thing that I really, really liked that she said was, maybe this is a learning opportunity. We're going to talk about ground rules later, and certainly we can use this potentially as a learning opportunity and throw it out to the group and say, what do we want to do in the future when things like this come up? Because I know it's not just going to affect Luke, it can happen to any of us. So very, very good points. Other ideas, share with me some of the other conversation you had. Speak up.
Number 3 for me. It also would depend on who the person who was, what exactly how important it is important, but I would go with number 3, but I would have added more to it.
And so what would you have added?
I would have said, you let me know earlier, then I would have been able to assist you or something like that, resources or something. I would have just let that person know, okay, this is happening, but at the same time, I know that I could have been able to help give them
3. So it sounds like you're saying, I want to be firm, but then show a little compassion. You know, if you would let me know, I could have done something about this, but this really isn't acceptable. I'm very, very surprised by this. What else?
I regret we really didn't even agree.
We couldn't.
No consensus over here.
Because she said, one is the culture of the company.
Talk a little about that.
Well,
That's true.
I mean, senior management, they have 11, initiatives they want to accomplish this year. If you're a project manager there and you form a team, all of a sudden they are taking your resources away almost as soon as they assign them to you. So it becomes a contextual just way of operating. Every day is a disaster.
Where's the fire?
Yeah.
He says, I'm living in chaos, so I just expect people to not be accountable. You know, I expect them to get pulled in from one fire to another, so I just let it roll off my back. It's not a big deal. Interesting.
Yeah.
Others. Other ideas. Yes.
Well, the only point I was making to this group was that if it was an exception, I might be kind of a little slack and see where we go. If it's a continuous pattern, I'd probably take a stiffer answer.
That's a very valid point. And those of us who are parents, don't we do the same thing? We really try to look at the context. Is this the first time they've done it, or is this a pattern? So certainly you want to look at the context as well. Other ideas? Yes.
The other challenge is, it depends upon the scenario, which would be if this is in the case of a volunteer organization, like an ASTD, right? But if it's like a volunteer and you're dealing with volunteers, then there's a fine line you're walking between being, quote, their manager, and the other fine line is, I don't need to take this, I'm out of here.
Exactly.
So you're walking a very fine line. So
it's a really, really delicate balance, because there's a delicate balance between focus on task and focus on relationship. I do want to focus on the task. I want to be somewhat assertive, but I know if I go too far with that, I can completely alienate this person, and now I've irrevocably damaged this relationship and maybe caused more problem than I should have had before. Oh, come on in. Come on in. We were just waiting for you. Now, and if you look at that, that's exactly what's going on here. These are the more lenient responses, and it becomes progressively more assertive. What's the problem if we're too lenient? What's the problem with a number 1 or number 2 response?
You're training them that you can get away
Say that louder.
You're training them that they can get away with it.
Doesn't Dr. Phil say you teach people how to treat you and how to treat the team? The problem is this. As soon as you kind of excuse the behavior, you're not only sending that message to them, who else are you sending it to?
Everybody.
You're sending it to everybody else. Because guess what? Now when he comes in next week and says he doesn't have his stuff, I've set a precedent. So how can I not give him a pass when I just gave him a pass? So, that's really the difficulty. And if you're too harsh, what's the potential problem? Alienation. Now they're passive aggressive. Now they're like, oh, this is how she's going to be. Well, I'll just let her drive over a cliff. I'm not going to say anything. Or it's like Mark was saying. I mean, maybe I don't have that legitimate authority. Maybe they really are volunteering their time. I can't be but so aggressive with them. I have to be very, very careful about that line. It's a really, really interesting scenario, which is why I brought it to you guys today. Really, really, because we've all been there. And it's really the crux of this accountability issue. How do we walk that line? What do we really say? And again, I do think it's very contextual. It depends on what the action item was, the person, the context. But let me offer to you something that I really developed over time to really build this culture of accountability. I just turn to Luke and I say, thanks so much for letting me know. Which action item was that? Oh, that was number 32. Wonderful. When we get to number 32 in our action item review, please just give your update to the group. She had it? What have I done with that response?
Social responsibility.
Yeah.
The team will take care of it.
Exactly, and that's what tends to happen. The team has this wonderful way of being able to discern how we should respond. Now notice, did I give him a pass and say it was okay? No. Did I chastise him and tell him, you're Satan, you're going to hell? I didn't do that either because it's really not my judgment to make. Whose judgment is it? The team. And what's really critical in that moment is the acknowledgement that really what's going on is he's trying to shift that accountability from him to me. And what have I done? All I've done is put it back on him. No value judgment, that's not for me to make, but I've made a clear statement saying running up to me right before the meeting is not going to work. Once you accept a task or an action item, we're really serious about accountability. And that's the culture that we're building here. And people learn very quickly. They really, really do.